When I was growing up, there was a house across the street that nobody lived in. It wasn't abandoned, not exactly. The lawn was mowed. The porch light clicked on at dusk. A car sat in the driveway, spotless, tires full of air, but no one ever came or went. The neighbors said an old man had owned it once, lived there alone for years, kept to himself. Then, one day, he just stopped being seen. Some thought he moved to a nursing home. Others whispered he died inside and no one found him. But the house stayed, quiet, waiting. As a kid, I was fascinated. I'd sit on my porch and watch, waiting for any sign of life. A curtain twitching, a shadow moving past a window, nothing. Then, when I was 12, something changed. I saw someone, standing in the upstairs window, not moving, just watching. It was dusk. The light was behind them, so I couldn't see a face, just a silhouette. Still, silent. I told my parents. They shrugged it off, said it was probably the realtor showing the place to buyers. But the next night, the figure was there again. And the night after that, always at the same time, just as the sun was sinking and the sky turned that deep, bruised purple. I tried waving once. Foolish, I know. The figure didn't react, just stood there, hands at its sides, watching. Weeks went by. I stopped sitting outside. Other kids on the street started whispering, said they saw the figure too, said if you stared long enough, it would move closer to the window. Just a little. Night after night. Closer. One night, I dared myself to keep watching. The figure was there, as usual, unmoving, but as the sky darkened, I realized something. The porch light was off. The car was gone. The house, empty, no maintenance, grass growing wild, windows thick with grime. No one had been taking care of it for months, yet the figure was still there, closer now, almost pressed against the glass. That night, I closed my blinds and didn't look again. Not until years later. I moved away for college, grew up, forgot about the house across the street, but on a visit home, I asked my mom about it. She looked uncomfortable, said the house was finally torn down last year after a fire. No one knew how it started. The official story was squatters, maybe teens messing around. But the firefighters said something strange. They found no signs of forced entry, no furniture, no squatters, just one thing. In the upstairs window, among the soot and broken glass, they found 2 handprints pressed against the inside of the glass, as if someone had been watching, waiting, even after the house was gone.
In 2017, a young couple, Marissa and Joel, moved into a century-old home in Asheville, North Carolina. They were both artists, drawn to the house's charm, creaky floorboards, stained glass, and a clawfoot tub. It needed work, but they saw potential. The weirdness started small. Joel began losing tools, nothing major, just a wrench here or a box cutter there. They chalked it up to the chaos of renovations. But then Marissa started hearing things. Faint creaks from the floorboards at night. Not the kind houses make when they settle. These sounded intentional, like slow, careful footsteps. One night, Marissa woke up to the floor beneath their bed groaning. Joel was asleep beside her. She lay still, heart pounding, convinced someone was moving directly under them. The sound stopped just as suddenly as it started. A few days later, while pulling up boards in the living room to install insulation, Joel found something. Beneath the subfloor was a narrow crawl space, one they didn't know existed. And inside that space, curled between rusted pipes and old cloth, was a mattress and a mirror, positioned perfectly to reflect upward through a gap between the planks. There were food wrappers, a rusted pocket knife, and worst of all, a spiral notebook. Inside were entries, dozens of them, dated. She hums while painting. He shaved today. They bought groceries, milk. I like milk. I think she knows. They called the police immediately. An investigation found that someone, likely a squatter or a previous tenant who had never really left, had been living under the house. Based on the condition of the space and the freshness of the notebook entries, Detectives believed he was still returning to the crawlspace on and off. The entry from the day before read, "Midnight is better. They don't hear me then." The access point was a rotted panel in the back closet, covered by boxes. Police never caught anyone. The couple moved out 2 weeks later. The new tenants installed steel flooring in the living room, just in case.
When Marcus moved into his new apartment, he thought he'd scored big. Downtown location, old brick charm, and dirt cheap rent. Too cheap. The landlord had brushed it off, saying, "The last tenant left in a hurry." Marcus didn't ask questions, he was just glad to be out of his old place. But within days, weird things started happening. First, it was the knocks, always at 3:17 a.m., not from the front door, from inside the walls, just 3 soft knocks. Then, silence. He figured it was plumbing, or rats, old building stuff. Then came the photographs. He found them tucked behind the kitchen cabinets. Dozens of old Polaroids, all of the same apartment, the same angle, same spot, different people. Every photo showed someone asleep on the couch, and in every single one, there was someone else standing behind them, barely visible, a shadow, a blur, a figure. Marcus showed them to his friend Jamie, who said flatly, "Dude, these people don't look like they knew they were being photographed." He went to the landlord again. The guy barely blinked, just muttered, "You're not the first to find those." The next night, Marcus set up a camera in his living room. Nothing fancy, just pointed at the couch, hit record, and went to bed. When he reviewed the footage the next morning, the couch was empty for most of the night, until 3:17 a.m. Then, movement, not from the front, from behind the couch. A shape, tall, pale, impossibly thin, rose up like it had been crouched there the whole time. It stared at the camera for several seconds, then slowly crawled out of frame. Marcus moved out that day, but a few weeks later, curiosity got the better of him. He went back to the building, just to see. The landlord was gone. The whole place was fenced off. Eviction notice on the door. A neighbor told him the building was being condemned after someone discovered a sealed room behind the living room walls, full of rotting mattresses and old camera equipment. They never figured out who had lived there, or how long he'd been watching.
This happened in the winter of 1996 in northern Hokkaido. I was working for Japan Rail at the time, mostly doing maintenance work, clearing snow off tracks, checking signal lines, that kind of thing. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well and kept me out of trouble. That winter, I got sent up to a place I'd never heard of, Station 49. It wasn't on the main schedule or any of the official maps I'd seen, and there wasn't even a road that led to it. You had to take a freight cart up an old spur line that hadn't seen passenger service in years. The station was tiny, just a concrete platform, a wooden sign, and a rusted maintenance cabin big enough for 2. I wasn't alone out there. My partner for the week was a man named Tanaka. He was older than me by maybe 20 years, quiet, and didn't like small talk. The first 2 days passed uneventfully. We shoveled snow, cleared switches, and checked the old signal box. Cold, repetitive work. But on the third night, everything changed. It was around 2:30 a.m. when I woke up to the sound of crunching snow. I figured maybe it was Tanaka going out to relieve himself, but his cot was still occupied. I looked through the little frost-covered window and froze. There was someone standing on the tracks, not walking, just standing completely still. They weren't facing us. They were turned toward the old station sign as if reading it in the dark. The wind was blowing hard, but this person didn't move at all, not even a shiver. I called Tanaka over in a whisper. He looked out the window for about 2 seconds, then pulled the curtain shut and said, "Don't open the door." No matter what. I asked him who it was. He didn't answer. He just turned off the radio and lay back down. That was the first time I felt real fear. Not panic, but the kind of deep fear that sits in your stomach and won't leave. An hour later, there was knocking on the cabin door. 3 soft knocks, perfectly spaced. I sat upright in my bunk, completely still. Then I heard a voice, a woman's voice just on the other side. She said, "It's cold. Let me in. Please. I'm so cold." The voice was calm, not desperate, not angry, just sad, almost polite, but I didn't move. I remembered what Tanaka said. He was lying there too, eyes shut tight, not sleeping, just pretending. The knocking came again, always 3 knocks, then silence. Then that voice. Please, it's so cold out here. By morning, she was gone. Tanaka didn't say a single word during breakfast. He just packed our things and told me we were heading back early. Schedule changed, was all he said. When we got back to the maintenance depot, he handed in a transfer request the same day. I never saw him again. Later that week, I asked around about Station 49. No one had ever heard of it. My supervisor looked at me like I was joking. He said there was no such station on our route list and never had been. I pulled out the logbook with our assignment, but the page was gone, ripped clean out. Years passed. I stopped thinking about it, moved south, started a family. But last winter, I came across a post online. A hiker had found an old train stop deep in the forest near Hokkaido. He called it Station 49 because of the rusted sign still hanging from a post. He said the place gave him a bad feeling, like he wasn't alone. He camped nearby, and around 3 a.m., he heard soft knocking. The post was deleted a few days later, but before it vanished, there was a picture attached. Just one. A weathered wooden door covered in frost. And on the glass, there were 3 perfectly melted handprints.